Welcome to Betting Weekly WTA, the weekly women's tennis betting podcast, brought to you in association with Bet Rivers. I'm Rory Jiwani, and with me, as always, to look forward to the week's action is the one and only Nigel Seeley, back from Dubai last night, back to the English winter. How are you, sir?
I'm very well. I had 3 seasons in one day. You turned away with beautiful sunshine, about 24 degrees, probably like springtime type weather. Landed in heavy snow, and then today it's about 10 degrees. It's quite nice, but it's absolutely raining like you wouldn't believe. It's just an amazing thing. I find it incredible. You get on a plane 5 hours late or 6 hours later, you're on the beach and then come home and then you've got 6 layers of jackets on. It's mad, isn't it, really? It's crazy, the world that we live in. But beautiful place as well. Yeah, great New Year's. Happy New Year to you, Roy. Happy New Year to everyone as well. Looking forward to a bit unfortunate last week, but ready to get back and raring to go this week.
Yeah, let's start by looking at last week, where Brisbane, the bigger of the two tournaments, didn't go to plan for either of us, with Deanna Schneider falling at the first. Your pick, Daria Kasatkina, went out in round 2 to the surprise package of the week. Polina Kudermetova, the younger sister of Veronika Kudermetova. She came through the qualifiers, the 21-year-old, went all the way to the final, and she took the opening set against world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka. Unsurprisingly, Sabalenka came back to win, but Kudermetova Jr. up to a career high 57 in the world. By contrast, Veronika's down to 76. Probably the one match to take out of that tournament, though, was the semi-final where Sabalenka beat Mira Andreeva in straight sets. The scoreline doesn't tell the story by any means. Sabalenka saved 8 out of 8 break points. Really good match. I think you picked out Andreeva as one to follow this year. I said in the week on Betting Weekly Live that the young Russian, she looks to have a bit more behind her serve this year. But she's going to be a threat, isn't she?
For sure, and we've thought that for many years. But I just think that the market knows about her, and I think that if you speak to so many betting judges, tennis women's betting judges, they're always going to say the same thing. And I did say that in the podcast last week, that I think she will win tournaments, but whether you're going to get value on her to win the tournaments is another question. So I think you're better off of her betting her in individual matches. If she gets a decent player like a Goff or a Paulini or a Rybakina or even Sabalenka again, I think you'll get better value on her individually in those matches rather than you would be for a tournament, because the whole world knows about this kid. She's an exceptional talent. She is the Luke Littler of the women's tennis world. And if you don't know Luke Littler, for even America, well, he's the most Googled person. He's probably the biggest star in the UK at the moment. He is the world darts champion. But she's that kind of person. She's got that sort of box office. She's one who everyone's hoping can go on to bigger and better things. But I do think she's always underpriced. So however good she is, I just think we can get proper value on her in those individual matches, whether we can on to win majors or to win big 1000s or 500 events.
Yeah, she was due to be playing this week in Adelaide, but she's pulled out, changing schedule, obviously, a week before the first slam of the year. Let's look at Auckland, where...
Just before we go
on.
That suggests to me that she thinks she can win it, or she thinks she can go deep. The fact that you're pulling out of a tournament like this when you're a young player, when you're 17, 18, you want to be playing whatever sport you are, whatever you do, week in and week out. But the fact that she's pulled out this tournament, I believe that she thinks she can go very deep in the Australian Open. So that's a tip in itself, I think.
Yeah, I think she won the doubles as well with Deanna Schneider, because they paired up in the Olympics, and I think they won the doubles in Brisbane as well. And so, yeah, I think you're right, though. I think she sees herself with a realistic chance. I mean, we can talk about it now. The Australian Open, obviously Sabalenka winning in Brisbane, she's the hot favourite. Coco Gauff, really good performance in the United Cup. She beat Iga Swiatek this morning in straight sets. Swiatek beat Jelena Rybakina in the semi-finals of that competition. I mean, to me, it looks like the winner's either going to be Sabalenka or Gauff. And then I think the rest are quite a long way behind them in terms of winning the Australian Open. And maybe Andreeva's in that next bracket below those two. What do you think?
I think it's so hard to have a bet on a major without seeing the draw, and I don't think I've ever had a bet. I have actually. I've bet Zverev to win the Australian Open, like at the end of last year when he was doing it amazing things, and then he didn't do so well at the Tour Championships. So I did then, but I think it's very, very hard to without seeing the draw, and even more so now with the way that the women's game is. I mean, it really is draw orientated. Who plays who, what the conditions are, what the weather is, because we've got a season here where Sabalenka, Goff, Swiatek, and we hopefully Rebecca can throw herself into that thing, and Zheng as well. Obviously, what she did as well. So we've got a sort of a 4 or 5 or 6 maybe if you could throw Andreeva into that, who are potentially going to be superstars. So it's a very exciting time for the women's game here. I don't believe that Sabalenka is the certainty that a lot of people might expect. Goff currently plus 350 with Bet Rivers. I wouldn't bet her at plus 350. I was off at 5. I might take it. And, Swiatek is now plus 460. I think the big question mark is around Rebecca. But we're going to come on to it next week. But I think now, the way the women's game is, I don't think you can possibly have a bet without seeing the bracket, without seeing the draw. So eagerly anticipated next week, and we'll have it all covered for you next Sunday.
We certainly will. Let's look at Auckland. Bit of a tale of woe for us, I think. Could have been really good, but wasn't. So Emma Raducanu pulling out with a back injury. So at least you get your money back, Nigel, on that one. But I had the semi-final I wanted with both my picks, Naomi Osaka and Alicia Parks. Osaka played really well in that semi-final to reach the final, and then she was playing some great stuff against Clara Tauson in the final. Took the first to 6-4, and then pulled out with an abdominal injury. Hopefully, she's back soon and going to be fit for Melbourne. But my question to you, Nigel Seeley, you put up Clara Tauson as one of your players to follow. Why didn't you back her?
I've been asking myself that question all day today. Why didn't I bet her? I mean, she is a player to follow. She's a player that I think that's always got the potential to be a top 10, top 20 player. If she's fit, she's obviously gone into it. I just sort of, I didn't think Bet Rivers was 20-1. I didn't think 20-1 was a good price. I was hoping she might be a little bit bigger than that. If she was bigger than that, I would have bet her. I went with Raducanu. We lost our money on that. Kazatkina obviously was 4-0 up in her match as well. So that was another one that let me down. So it was a tough week, and I should have bet her. But there's plenty more opportunities to get with Clara Tauson. It might be this weekend. This week we'll see.
It might be. What can we say about Raducanu? I mean, she's
Nothing.
working with Maria. She's working with Maria Sharapova's former fitness trainer. This was supposed to be, a sort of new start. And...
Well, he's got to be older than me. She's been around in the late 90s. I mean, you're talking about almost 30 years ago now. So, the game's changed a little bit since then. I don't think that's a positive.
Yeah, I mean, the trainer, he worked with Naomi Osaka as well, and it's not paying dividends yet. It seems like Raducanu's had more false dawns than, I don't know, Welsh rugby team, Toronto Maple Leafs. Just hopefully she'll get back to her best at some point, but she's probably one to avoid at the moment just because she just can't seem to stay fit. We did touch on a United couple. We mentioned Jelena Rybakina. As the plot thickens with her because we talked about her working with Goran Ivanisevic. Now her former coach, Stefano Vukov's back on board. But apparently he's banned from WTA events. So won't be able to be with her in Melbourne. So that's who knows what's going to happen with Rybakina. I mean, she's been playing quite well in the United Cup, but hopefully that sorts itself out. But, that's... And Melbourne's only a week away. I mean, it's just coming so quickly. Rybakina, if she's... I mean, it all depends on the draw she gets, doesn't it?
100%. But she gave on her Instagram account that he will be with her. And then, there was rumours that he wasn't with her. So I think it's she's well open, but of the Australian Open prices as we are now, she is the interesting one at double figure prices. She's the one to me that I think she could be half the price of that, or she could be double the price of that, and we'll know when the tournament starts next week.
We will indeed. Let's move on to this week's tournaments, both getting underway tonight Eastern Time. We'll start with the 500 in Adelaide. Of course, a number of the top players taking this week off before Melbourne. Now, last week we had two tournaments with quick conditions, and Adelaide is similar. Last year, Elena Ostapenko beat Daria Kasatkina in the final. Kasatkina was in the final the year before, where she was on the wrong end of a bit of a hiding from Belinda Bencic. All three players are in this draw. Now, last year, that was the second of two Adelaide tournaments. First went the way of Aryna Sabalenka. Sorry, that was 2023. The year before that, Madison Keys won this tournament equivalent. Ashley Barty the week before that, when there were two Adelaides. The stats and previous winners certainly lean towards the big hitters and servers. It's going to be hot. Bit of an overnight storm about now, I think, but it's going to be getting up into the 90s later in the week. That's mid-30s Celsius. Nigel, anyone or anything that jumps out to you in terms of conditions and players to keep an eye on here?
Well, the one thing I do know is that Adelaide has had more versions of it than the Rocky movies. There's Adelaide 1, Adelaide 2, Adelaide 3. We haven't got Clubber Creed, or what was it? It was Clubber Lang in this. But yeah,
Apollo Creed, wasn't it Apollo Creed?
Apollo Creed and Clubber Lang. I got the two mixed up. The Apollo Creed and Clubber Lang. But it is quick. The weather is going to be very, very fast. I think you look at big servers, but really looking at this draw, there doesn't seem to be really many big servers in the draw. There are a few in the bottom half of the draw, but they're in drastic form. So can we sort of trust them? So it's a tournament here that you want to be with big servers. You want to be with players that can hit the ball hard. And if you look through the years in this tournament, the top seeds have done very, very well. You don't have shock winners, as you said, Ostapenko, Sabalenka, Barty, Keys, Świątek. Barty won it twice as the number one seed. So these are all players that have been in the top 6 seedings. You've only had a few unseeded players who've actually gone all the way to make the finals, and qualifiers have done very, very poor in this tournament here. So it is a tournament that seeded players do exceptionally well. We do have 8 seeds in the tournament. And I think if you are going to look for a bet in this tournament, I think it's going to be very wise for you to stay with the top players. I don't think there'll be much value looking for players outside of those seedings. If you look at the trends of this tournament, the tournament's usually done well by the players that have been fancied to do well at the top end of the market.
Well, if the seeds all make it through to the quarterfinals, we'll have number 1 seed Jess Pegula up against 5th seed Paula Badosa. And that's in the top quarter. In the second quarter, Danielle Collins, number 4, against Deanna Schneider, number 6. Into the bottom half, third quarter, 8th seed Elena Ostapenko against Daria Kasatkina. She's the number 3 seed. And then the bottom quarter, 2nd seed Emma Navarro and 7th seed Anna Kalinskaya. Pegula and Navarro, as the top 2 seeds, get buys into the second round. But, and there's a big but here. When I looked at this draw last night, Nigel, I just thought it's one of the most lopsided draws I've ever seen, because all the dangers were in the top half and the bottom half was just full of players really out of form. Like Emma Navarro has won 2 matches since reaching the US Open semi-finals, for instance, and she lost first round last week in Brisbane. And I just thought, I mean, the qualifiers who have entered the draw have made it a little bit more even, but I just thought all the dangers. I mean, the top half, you did have Andreeva, but she's pulled out. She's been replaced by lucky loser Maria Sakkari. I mean, there's a fall from grace. The winner of that match plays Pegula, the match between Sakkari and Linda Noskova. As well as the seeds, you've got, Ons Jabeur plays Danielle Collins first round. Donna Vekic up against Julia Putintseva. And then you've got a couple of players who've been off for a while. Marketa Vondrousova against Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova. They're all in the top half. And the bottom half, you've got Beatrice Haddad-Mayer and Madison Keys in an interesting match. Belinda Bencic is back from her baby break. She's a former winner. Maria Bauskova and Leila Fernandez, who I thought looked interesting. But then you've got the likes of Ludmila Samsonova and Ekaterina Alexandrova, who are so out of form.
Mm.
I mean, has there anything really taken your eye in the draw?
Well, I think when the draws as it was made, I took your point a little bit about the lopsidedness of it, but then the wild card of Jabeur going in the top half of the draw, we've spoken about somebody who might have a rebase of it. You've also got Sakkari, as you said, a player who's been at the top 4 in the women's game, has done well at majors and done well at this time of the year. So it sort of changed it out a little bit. But I do think this draw is hard. I think there's a lot of question marks about the players. I think there's a lot of interest about players. Can we trust a lot of Deanna Schneider as well? You know, we both went with her last week. Can we trust her again after her performance is a little bit too times? And also, I think the strategy for a lot of players here, I know the big C's have done well in this tournament, is do the top players really want to go at it and go all out this week to win this tournament when the major comes next week? So I think if you're a Jess Pegula here or a Paula Badosa or someone who's harbouring hopes of winning the Australian Open, I think you want to get the quarterfinals, semi-finals, do well, get some match practice in, try some new techniques, look at the coaching elements. I don't think you want to go all the way to win it, because then you could be scheduled to play again. And I don't think to get to the final then come straight away in such a short period is the right thing to do. So that's an intriguing part for me. But I'm looking at it here now, and there is a few things I like, but all of them in the bottom half of the draw.
Yeah, let's have a look at the odds, if I can find them. Just seem to have lost them momentarily. Adelaide odds, Jessica Pegula, plus 400 favourite. Madison Keys, $7. Emma Navarro, $8. Paula Badosa, also $8. Same price for Ons Jabeur. Deanna Schneider's $9. Daria Kazatkina, $11. And that's the same price as Linda Noskova and Anna Kalinskaya. Danielle Collins, $13. Of course, she reversed her decision to retire last season. Lyudmila Samsonova, $15. Yelena Ostapenko and Yulia Putintseva, $20. And it's $25 bar those. I mean, I've got to be honest, Nigel. I had a look. I couldn't find a bet in this. I looked long and hard, and there was no one, for all the reasons you say, out of form. Can we trust them? For instance, Schneider last week. Navarro's out of form. Pegula we haven't seen since Riyadh when she pulled out injured in the WTA finals. I just couldn't find a bet.
Well, I'm looking at the draw here. I think Pegula at $4 is a fade. I think that Bet Rivers keep the American players a little bit short on their side because they know that there's going to be a lot of money for the American players. And I think Jessica Pegula at $4 isn't the bet for me. I also think she's going to take a bit of time to get playing. She hasn't been regularly playing, so I think $4 is a short price for me. In that top half, Paula Badosa is very, very interesting, but $8, it's a big risk because she's got to play Peyton Stearns, who's in good, is a dangerous opponent in the first round. Then she's got to play Kostyuk, who is a player that I've always thought could break through and really challenge the top sort of 10, 15 in the world rankings. And then she's got to play Pegula. So that is a very, very, very difficult route for Paula Badosa on the comeback trail. So that to me was a very difficult quarter. Collins, I would probably fade her in the first round against Ons Jabeur. I think Ons Jabeur will beat her, but she's going to be a slight favourite for that match. And then you got Schneider, who let us down last week. So all my attention comes down to the bottom half, and then we've really got some women, and I refer to these people as like horses or tennis. I call them headbangers. People that are just like you, just complete. If I bet a horse and it's a bit of a nutcase, it's a headbanger. There's some headbanging women tennis players here. Helena Ostapenko, I know she's won this tournament last year, but you couldn't trust her in this tournament to do anything at the price she is here, 20-1. You've got Madison Keys, who was overwhelmingly beat by Clara Tauson, who was out hit by Clara Tauson, which would worry me if I was a Madison Keys backer at 7-1. You got Samsonova, who we've mentioned so many times over the last couple of years as a player that's got all the big serve, everything about her, but never ever wins. And then we got Navarro, who I would not bet with your money, anyone's money, at 8-1. I mean, her form at the end of last season was awful. She's a player that I think really, she could be like the Sakkari this year, who could drop so many ranking points and fall down the world rankings. Because I tell you what, she's nowhere near the ranking she is. I think she's very, very, very fortunate with the tournament she's won. But I think she's going to go backwards this year. So looking through all that and looking through the draw, there's Navarro only played one match this season. She got beat by Burrell in very easy. The one I like here, and you mentioned her already, I'm going to have a half a point each way on Leylah Fernandez at 25-1. She's not even in the graphic. That's how disrespectful producer John has been to Leylah Fernandez. She's not even in the graphic. She's a US Open champion. She's a qualifier that's coming to the draw. She plays Alexandrova in round 1. Difficult match for her. But I fancy whoever won that to beat Navarro. I want to fade Navarro. I want to fade Kalinskaya. I want to fade Samsonova. And I think that Q4, I think Leylah Fernandez here, 25-1. She's done all right. She's done all right in her performances so far this season. She got beat by Coco Gauff in the United Cup, but prior, she's beaten what's expected of her. And I thought at the end of last year, I thought we may see a bit of Leylah Fernandez, what we saw from the US Open when she got to the final against Raducanu. So at a big price, 25-1, I'm going to have a half a point each way on Leylah Fernandez. No bet for you, Rory.
Well, I'll tell you what I've got in my notes here. Okay, maybe Badosa is the answer, but the top half is tough. I'm tempted by Leylah Fernandez, but I haven't got a price because she's come through the qualifier. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I 25-1.
Yeah,
that's quite big. I wasn't expecting her to be that big.
She's a major finalist. 25-1, I think it's a big price.
Yeah, I agree. So what are you having, half a point each way?
Half a point each way. Leylah Fernandez. She's got me on my knees, Leylah. And I'm begging, darling, please win the Adelaide tournament for me at 25-1.
Yeah. I'll follow you in on that. I'll have half a point each way on her as well. Because I honestly, I didn't expect her to be 25. I thought she'd be maybe around 16. That sort of price. 25 in a tournament like this, I think is too big. My only concern with Fernandez is she does seem, and we've seen it the end of last 2 years and in the United Cup, she does seem to these days produce her best in these team competitions. She was brilliant in the Billie Jean King Cup end of 2023 when Canada won it. Very good again this year. Sorry, last year, just gone. Good in the United Cup. But that fourth quarter, as you say, and that second half, it's the bottom half of the draw is very winnable. I mean, as we say, Daria Kasatkina could come through and make it 3 finals in a row, but I think she's only 12-1. Twice the price of that about Leylah Fernandez. I think it's a good bet. So I think we're in agreement. We'll go for Leylah Fernandez in Adelaide. Let's move on to the 250 in Hobart. Now, the important thing to note here is that we've been looking at these Australian Open prep tournaments. They're all been pretty quick, but Hobart is consistently the exception. As some of you have been listening to us for the last couple of years and listening to me, I'm quite keen on court speed as a guide, and I think most people are as far as tournaments. Hobart for the last 2 years has been about 4 or 5 clicks slower than the others. So Auckland, for instance, was about 70% in terms of service hold percentage. That's the guide I tend to use for court speed. And Hobart for the last 2 years has been between 64 and 65. So that makes it a medium pace court as opposed to a quick one. So that tends to bring other players into the mix. We've just looked at Adelaide where, the harder hitters and bigger servers are favoured by the faster courts. That's not going to be the case in Hobart. And the last 2 previous winners, Emma Lavaro last year and Lauren Davis in 2023, bear that out. It's also going to be a bit cooler in Hobart and very windy for the first couple of days. Now, as you'd expect for a 250 the week before a slam, this is not a strong tournament. If the 8 seeds go through to the quarterfinals, top seed Diana Yastremska, who needs a good Aussie Open, her ranking is going to go through the floor. She's going to play 7th seed Rebecca Sramkova. 3rd seed Amanda Anisimova. She'll meet number 6 Elena Avanesian. Bottom half, 5th seed Lulu Sun and 4th seed Magda Linette. And then in the bottom quarter, Elise Mertens, the number 2 seed against Yue Yuan of China. I think when Sramkova reached the final in Monastir, last year. I don't think one seed made the quarterfinals, and that wouldn't surprise me hugely in this tournament. This is going to be a bit tricky, I think, Nigel. Bit slower conditions. The quality of this tournament is not really up to much, is it?
Well, it's amazing that this is a 250 compared to the 250 we've spoken about in Adelaide, because we've got former major finalists, we've got players, former major winners in one of them, and the number one seed in this one is the Dariana Yastramenko, who's been in absolutely awful form. Going through the stats in this tournament, it has been 30 years of this tournament. 30. How many number one seeds have won this tournament in 30 years, do you reckon, Rory?
One. Is it
the
one?
Year 2007. If you
Wow.
got the net winner of 2007 in Hobart, well, you're a cheat if you did.
I'm not even going to guess.
Chakavadze won it in 2007. And you know, that shows you, out of 30 years of this tournament, how many unseeded players have won the tournament?
I reckon about half.
20.
Good grief.
20 unseeded players have won this tournament. So this tournament is wide open. You've got the number one seed who's in the first round she's underdog in the first round. But I think you've got to look for unseeded players. I do think that this is a tournament that players, it's so different from the conditions what you're going to see in the Australian Open, that I think they come in here, they get some little bit of match practice, and then they get on the plane straight away and go to Melbourne. I don't think it's a tournament where you can trust any favourites. If you look at favourites in this tournament, do not perform well in the match bets. They do not perform well on the tournament winner. It is a tournament for underdogs, and that is exactly your approach you have to have here. I would favourites in match bets, and I'd favourites or seeded players on the outright market.
Sorry about that disruption. My drinks coaster hit the floor. So if you had a bit of a bang, that was it.
No problem.
I have noticed that. I noted that about, obviously, week before the Slam. But none of these players, I don't think, are going to be competitive in Melbourne. And it could be an opportunity to win a tournament, don't you think?
Well, I think it's more the fact that it's not the conditions that they're going to play. I think people would like to go deep in Adelaide, because it's going to be similar to what they're going to find in Melbourne. As you said, this is slow. So I think that players will come here, play a couple of rounds and think, why would you want to play your best tennis on a surface that's not going to be when you get the serious bucks? So I'm a bit unsure about it, but I think it's opportunities for lesser known players to come in and win a tournament. I think that hence the reason why unseeded players. But you've got to remember as well, I mean, back in the day, this tournament's been won by Rebecca, and it's been won by Kenning, been won by Mertens a few times. So this is a tournament that there's been better additions than this year. This year was a very, very poor addition. But you can tell by the field, it's 8-1 in the field. So, you know, it's a hard one. It's a very, very hard one to call.
Yeah, you've mentioned there, 8-1 the field. We can have a look at the odds with Bet Rivers. And Amanda Anisimova, despite being knocked out in the first round in Brisbane, in Auckland by Alicia Parks. She's the $8 favourite. Elise Mertens, Magdalenette, both $9. I think both lost their openers last week as well. Clara Tauson, champion in Auckland, $10. That same price as Veronika Kudermetova. Sophia Kenin, she's next at $12. And then you've got a few players at 14s. Elena Avanesian, Olga Danilovic, Angelina Kalinina and Yue Yuan. McCartney Kessler, the shock winner in Cleveland last year, she's $16. And then $18 bar those. I suppose, as you mentioned, let's look outside the seeds. Interesting ones to watch, perhaps. Katie Volanets, who plays the number one seed, Diana Yastremska, first up. She will be favourite for that first match. Mentioned Kessler, who won in Cleveland. She's up against Rebecca Sramkova, first up. In the bottom half, you've got Olga Danilovic, who won in Guangzhou at the end of last year, last October. Similar conditions to these. That was the last time we saw her, though. She took the rest of the season off to rest her troublesome knee. Kalinina, she reached semi-finals in Auckland. Tough opener against Tauson, and I'd be a bit against. I mean, you'll probably bring in your auto fade for Tauson this week, but
Well, we'll see in a
Kalanina
minute. We'll see in a minute.
okay, could be an upset. Kalanina and Tauson, never two players. I don't know, not the most durable. Personally, I'd be against both of those. What do you think?
Well, I think if Clara Tauson never won the tournament last week, she would definitely be on my radar at 10-1. I don't think it's any logic for her to go back to back winning tournaments ahead of the Australian Open. I just don't think that's a sensible strategy. I think she can go deep in it. The prize money's good here, but I think I think she'll get through a couple of rounds, but I don't think it. In the top half of the draw, it's really weird. And we got Jastrzębska here as the favourite. She's only won one match in 13 of her last matches, and that was in a sort of a challenger event over at Christmas in the first round in a very, I don't think it was a challenger, it was some kind of weird tournament she was playing. But end of last season, she went from the Olympics. She lost every single match, and she's the number one seed here. This is a tournament where number one seeds do not perform. She's an underdog in a tournament, so I think you're going to lose the number one seed straight away. And if we're going to lose the number one seed straight away, if you look at current form in this tournament, Anisimova we can't bet because injury. Sharankova, she's not playing very well at all. Avison I actually quite liked, but I something about her I didn't really like. Tauson obviously winning the tournament, but this is a tournament where unseeded players go well, and I think we've got a number one seed that is vulnerable, and she's up against an opponent who I think is a very decent opponent in Katie Volinets, 23-year-old American, she's up to 56 in the world now, which is her highest ever ranking. She's moving in the right direction. She did well last week in Auckland. She beat Mira Andreeva's sister in round one, where she was the underdog there. It was a big money move for Andreeva. She lost to Alicia Parks, who had a great week, which is no disrespect for her. And she's got a tournament favourite in the first round. I think she'll get through. Once she beats the number one seed, I think she's going to get confidence. And I fully expect her to beat the number one seed. And I'm going to go for Katie Volinets here to win the tournament. I think there's so many question marks. Tauson, I think, would be someone on my radar. But after winning last week, my strategy all the time is to fade them. So my bet here, and again, I'm going to have half a point each way, is Katie Volinets at 20-1 with Bet Rivers. It's a tournament where underdogs do very well. 20 years out of 30, an unseeded player has won it. And only once in 30 years has a number one seed won this tournament. And she's up against the number one seed. She's the favourite against the number one seed. And I think once she gets rid of her, the draw opens up. So Katie Volinets is my bet here at 20-1 with Bet Rivers. You're smiling. I've got a sense of feeling you're going to say the same.
Yeah, I promise you, we haven't conferred on this before going live, but I've gone for Volinets as well. Wow. I actually opposed her on Betting Weekly Live during the week. I fancied Parks to beat her in straight sets. All her forms on slower surfaces, Volinets. And she's a good player, as you say. She's just outside the top 50. And she did play well in Auckland. She beat Erika Andreeva, Mira Andreeva's older sister, as you said. And this is wide open, and I think $20 is a good price. I also like Olga Danilovic. She'll be my other pick.
Yeah, I've got her as well. I've got the three. The three I like is Tauson, Danilovic, and Volinets. They're the three I've got. They're on my. If you can see that sheet there, if you can see that on the camera. I'm old school. I've gone for three unseeded players. Tauson, I've got Danilovic and Volinets, and I've just gone at the price because I think even though she's the favourite to win the tournament, right? She is the favourite to win this tournament. Sorry, I've got that wrong. She's the favourite to win her match, against the number one seed. The price differential between Volinets and Jastrzębska is exactly the same. They're both 20-1 to win the tournament. But she's like a minus 150 and getting lower in the money market. So that's a sign in itself that she should be shorter price, Jastrzębska. And I think if she gets rid of the number one seed, automatically she halves in price. So you're betting something here, I think, that you're betting a minus 160 chance in round one that will suddenly be 20-1 to win the tournament, will suddenly become 10-1. And if Tauson just doesn't fancy it, I wouldn't be surprised to see Tauson withdraw before the tournament started as well. That could happen as well. So then it opens up massively, and I think Volonetzi at 20s is definitely the play.
Yeah, I have to say, 'cause when I saw Andreeva had pulled out of Adelaide, I was expecting Tauson to pull out of this as well, because we know she's not the most physically robust. But yeah, if she pulls out as well, which is very possible, then it becomes even more open. It's funny. My shortlist was Volonets, Danilovic, Kalinina, and Avanesian was my shortlist.
Avanesian was on my list as well, but
yeah.
I narrowed it down to 3.
Yeah, I nearly went for Kalinina, but I just thought because she went deep last week, I didn't really want to be with her this week. And it's funny because she got to the final of Rome a year and a half ago now, and then we barely saw her after that. She just had lots of injury problems, and she's never been quite the same since. But she showed good signs in Auckland. She did come from match point down. Beg your pardon, in Brisbane, she came from match point down in one of her matches. But yeah, I've gone for Volinet and Danilovic. Danilovic at $14. Were you going to have Danilovic as well, or were you sticking with Volinet?
That was on my shortlist. My shortlist was Danilovic and Volonets, but I think at the price, Volonets is the better play. Danilovic obviously has a tricky match in round 1 against Joint. The odds, you don't want to be too high on the odds. Get the old joking again. But I think she's got a fairly easy section in Q3. But I think 20-1, Volonets is the bet. I really do.
There we go. I will say about Joint, she did give Victoria Azarenka a scare last week. I think she was a break-up in the decider before Azarenka came back to win. Talented young Australian player. So there it is. That's our look at this week's action in Adelaide and Hobart. I guess we should rattle off our picks. I think Adelaide, we both went for Leylah Fernandez, didn't we?
Well, I think we agree on both here, and we've got some big outsiders, only small unit plays. I do think it's quite a dangerous time to bet. Start the season and the week before a major, I think it's, keep your powder dry until we get into the nitty and gritty. So, yeah, we've got half a point each way on Fernandez for me and half a point each way for Volonets for me. And I think you're pretty much the same.
Yeah, I'll go half a point on Fernandez in Adelaide, and then in Hobart, I'll just do half a point on Danilovic.
So we got 1 point each way on both. So we got 1 point each way collectively on those two players, and a saver on Danilovic as well.
Just on Fernandez, I'll let you have Volonets to yourself this week, and I'll go for Danilovic. So we've got it covered. It's definitely not a time to get carried away on the stake front, but Fernandez at $25 just looks a bit too big from here. But we'll see how they get on, and the next time you're with us, it will be for the Australian Open, which we're very much looking forward to. So that's it from Betting Weekly WTA for this week. Of course, Nigel is a very busy man today. You've got Sean Calvert on the ATP show as well, haven't you?
Yeah, straight after this, Sean Calvert. It was in good form last week. A bit unlucky with his tip. Got through to the semi-finals was favourite Dimitrov. Bit like yourself, Rory, and then he gets injured as well. So we had a very, very tough start of the season. The WTA last week, we lost 4 units, I think, on the week. And ATP2 lost, I think, a unit as well. But the football boys are doing good. And yeah, looking forward to Sean Calvert. Remember, you can get all that stuff on the YouTube channel, Betting Weekly Studios. Make sure you subscribe and give us a follow on all our Instagram and socials as well. Because we win.
Absolutely. Get on board.
We
with
won
the
a
social
unit.
teams.
We won a unit last week on the ATP Tour show. Well, not lost a unit. I said we lost a unit. We won a unit.
There you go. Yeah, I thought we lost a bit less than 4 because Osaka got to the final. But yeah, anyway. Plenty of time left.
We'll have a stewards, and we'll get that worked out.
But yeah, plenty of time for us to win it back, and of course we're all building up, looking forward to Melbourne next week. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next week for more on Betting Weekly WTA.